Good morning. Welcome to the Coos County Board of Commissioners meeting for October 19th, 2021. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States
of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All righty. We're on item 2, public hearing. A, ordinance imposing a 9.5% tax on short-term lodging, transit lodging tax in the Charleston area. Who wants to present? Is that you, County Council?
Yes, Commissioner Main. This public hearing is for the purpose of considering ordinance 2110-004L. We published notice of this in the World newspaper on October 8th. Made postings in accordance with ORS 203.045. This ordinance would impose a 9.5% tax on short-term lodging in the Charleston area, also known as transient lodging tax. If approved, the ordinance would only be effective if approved by voters in the May 2022 election. I want to note that I can't get my years straight, so it says 2021 on the agenda item. The ordinance would create a new Division 3 to Article 12 of the Coos County Code, setting forth the essentials of the proposed tax. And this, once again, this would be the first reading of that ordinance.
All righty. So we're not in a normal Board of Commissioner mode. Do we need to read this whole ballot title?
It just needs to be read by title, so that would be in the caption where it says an ordinance of Coos County.
Okay.
And I could do that.
Okay, please.
So this is an ordinance of Coos County imposing a 9.5% transient lodging tax in the Charleston area and amending the county code to add Article 12, Division 3, imposing the tax.
All righty. Is there any other action needed?
Typically, at this point, we would see if there was any public comments on the ordinance and then set the next date for the final reading.
I don't have access to see who signed on to the meeting. I only see you and Commissioner Sweet.
I see, I can see the list, but I don't know if I can tell if people are raising their hand or not. But I can see.
Okay. Oh, where did it go? Right there.
Okay, and then attendees down there.
Attendees?
Yeah. So you have to kind of scroll. It's the people that might be raising their hand would be at the top.
Okay. Let's see here. David, John, Megan, Melissa. What's this one here?
They haven't done anything in a while. They haven't moved their mouse or anything. So you're not seeing.
I don't see anybody with their hand up that are signed on. County Council.
Okay, then I think we can conclude that there is no one who wishes to provide a comment, in which case we just need to set the second hearing date for November 2nd, 2021.
Okay.
I move we set the next hearing date for November 2nd, 2021.
Do I have a second? Melissa, are you there?
She's a couple seconds behind.
Oh, she's muted.
Click on that black microphone. Go over to staff.
Staff. Where are you?
I'll second.
Oh, she's
Thank
on.
you.
Okay. This is interesting technology. All righty. Any other discussion about this before we take a vote? And I can hear it. It's about 2 seconds behind me. Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All righty. 2B, ordinance promulgating rules and regulations to enforce and collect a proposed transit lodging tax on short-term lodging in the Charleston area. Item B.
Okay, so this is ordinance 2110-005L. This is related to the ordinance, the other ordinance, 2110-004L. This would just be the more technical rules for the collection and enforcement of that tax. This would also only become effective if ordinance 2110-004L is approved by the voters at the May 2022 election. And I want to note that in the ordinance 2110-005L that I submitted, I made a typo and said it becomes effective if the ordinance is approved in the November 2020 election. That's a error. It's just a carryover from the last time we did this. So I will correct that to specify the May 2022 election in the next version. I just wanted to point that out. In any event, we can just read this by title, which I will do. In the matter of amending the Coos County Code to promulgate rules and regulations to enforce and collect the Charleston area transit and lodging tax. So now we need to take any comment and set for the next date at November 2nd.
All righty. So I need a motion.
I move we conduct the next hearing of this ordinance November 2nd, 2021.
I'll second.
Okay. Any discussion about this? And I'm looking for hands on the computer here. I clicked onto attendees. I don't see anybody with their hand raised. And there's only 8 on the system anyway. That's 3 extra people besides the 3 of us and staff. With that, all in favor?
Aye.
All righty. There we are. It's delayed about 2 or 3 seconds.
Aye.
All right, 3A, request approval of IGA 77775588-V1 with Oregon Health Authority and authorize Mike Rowley to sign for Coos Health and Wellness. Mike, are you there?
Yes.
There he is. I see him.
So this IGA is to allow us to share information with the Department of Revenue for the statewide tobacco retail license program that went into effect or will go into effect.
Okay, is that it?
When does it go into effect?
January.
January 1?
Yes, I believe so. And my understanding is businesses will start receiving notification around the beginning of next month.
So what does this do? Collect any
This-
local fee adopted by a local public health authority?
So this particular IGA is so we can transfer information back and forth between them and us.
And I would just also state that the new bill does allow for a local public health authority to have their own fees in administering the program, but this IGA doesn't impose any fees from the county. It just sort of sets a template for our relationship with the state. So,
Okay, thank you for clearing that up. I was going to ask that question.
My understanding is Oregon Department of Revenue will be setting the fees, not us, right?
yes.
All
Yes.
right. So a motion, please.
I move we approve IGA 77775888-V1 with the Oregon Health Authority and authorize Department Head Mike Rowley to sign.
There's a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, team. Moving on to 3B, request approval of job description for mobile response team manager position and approved posting and filling. Mike.
Yeah, so currently we have one person that manages both the crisis team that works in-house and the mobile response unit, which is 24/7. And we are requesting to basically split that position. So we have an additional manager that will manage the mobile response team.
Okay, do I have a motion?
I move to approve the mobile response team program manager job description and approve posting and filling the position.
Second.
Okay, discussion? I don't see any other hands raised either. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, 3C, request award of contract for fencing project at Beaver Hill. John Rowe, Roadmaster,
Can you hear me?
Solid Waste Director. Yes, John, we can.
Okay. So yeah, we had two bidders on the fence project. So the low bid was 178,971. Our budget was 150, so we're gonna take some money out of the roofing fund to make up the difference. The second bidder was 215,000, so it weren't even close, so.
All righty, do I have a motion?
I move we award the Coos County Solid Waste Beaver Hill fencing project contract to West Coast Fencing for the amount of $178,971.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, discussion. I assume this is for security of solid waste.
Yes, it is.
Okay, for over the years, we've had lots of issues out there, especially in the dark.
Oh, yeah. So this will be a 7-foot fence with 3 strands of barbed wire on top. So pretty much go around the whole facility up to where the road wides to the scales. And then in the future, we'll probably fence the rest of it out to the highway.
Okay. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, 3.
Sorry, can I just ask a question, Commissioner
Sure.
Rain? Sorry, in this format, it's a little odd, but
Yes, it is.
did we look at as an optional add-on what it would take to do your future expansion now? It seems to me like there would be some mobilization costs and it might be cheaper to do it now than to wait.
No, I haven't yet, but I can do that to see how much it would cost. So we're
I
gonna
think
kind
it's
of
a good
wait till they
idea.
burn all the piles and do all that. So didn't want to do it now until they
It seems like a pretty
burn
big,
all the brush piles right next to the roadway there.
yeah. I assume the time frame on that is coming up in the next month, isn't it?
Yeah, and our
November?
fence is going to be built in November, December, probably December. So kind of coinciding at the same time.
Maybe they could
Hopefully we'll have
build that
that.
part last, but anyway,
Yeah.
something to look in.
Good idea.
All righty, we voted on that already. So moving on to 3D, introduction to U.S. Fish and Wildlife Field Office Supervisor, Michelle Zuertes. Is that correct?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Hi, good morning, everyone. Yes, Michelle Swarches, and I'm the Field Office Supervisor for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service Oregon Coast Field Office located in Newport, Oregon. And thank you for your time this morning. I just wanted to make sure that the members of the commission were aware of some conversations that are going on about the potential for reintroducing sea otters to the Oregon coast, and to give you the opportunity to ask any questions you might have about it. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service received a directive from Congress at the end of 2020 to report back by the end of this year on the feasibility and cost of reintroducing sea otters to the contiguous Pacific coast of the United States. And our report is focusing on the coast of Northern California and Oregon. Oregon is the only state on the West Coast that does not have a sea otter population any longer. They were eliminated from most of their range by the early 1900s from overhunting for the fur trade. I want to emphasize this is not a proposal to reintroduce sea otters. It is merely a feasibility study. So the primary components of our study are looking at the biological and ecological feasibility, legal, and socioeconomic aspects of a potential reintroduction of sea otters. There's also, you may have heard of a nonprofit group called the Alaka Alliance that is simultaneously conducting a feasibility study, so it's confusing for everyone. But they are primarily focusing on the biological aspects of a reintroduction. And because of that, we are focusing our study more on legal and socioeconomic questions of feasibility. And just to let you know, I think our final report is going to emphasize that more study is needed. We've been having interviews with key constituencies throughout the state, commercial fishermen, conservation groups, seafood processors, and we're going to be reporting back to Congress on their perspectives and questions on how this might impact the fisheries industry in particular. So I believe you have some information in your agenda packets, some frequently asked questions that are provided. If I can answer any questions for you now, I'm happy to do so.
I did notice that in reading some other documents, that many of the tribes up and down the coast are highly interested in the reintroduction also.
Yes, and we have reached out to each of the coastal tribes and asked them to provide us with their position statement that we're going to be including in our report to Congress.
Okay, and then it talked about there was an attempt to reintroduce, but it didn't seem to catch on like it did in other areas. And
Yes, that's right.
you know
So
why.
much of the population in existence today is actually the result of reintroductions that occurred in the late 1960s, early 1970s, including a reintroduction that occurred on the southern Oregon coast there in your area. So Port Orford, Cape Arago, and they hung on for about 10 years. They even reproduced and produced pups during that time, but eventually that population blinked out. The other ones were successful. They think that some of the Oregon otters may have actually migrated northward and joined the population that's now established in Washington.
Okay.
Yeah, they're really not sure why the population in Oregon did not.
What is their typical food source?
They eat large benthic invertebrates, so they don't eat fish, except for in very northern parts of Alaska. There's a population that eats fish, but here they're going to eat clams, crabs, urchins, mussels, turban snails, sea cucumbers, primarily shellfish.
Interesting. They're cute little things, I know that. You see them on TV once in a while. They're laying on their backs, pounding away with on a clam shell or something and trying to get the clam open, where they have pups, and they're really interesting animal.
They are. They're very unique. There's no other animal quite like it anywhere in the world. We think that on the Oregon coast, they were probably never terribly numerous. There's only isolated bits of habitat up and down the coast. And there aren't, fur trade records don't show that there was a huge population here in Oregon. And I can tell you that one of the primary questions I've been getting from fishermen is they're very concerned about the numbers growing too high. Like there are very large numbers of sea otters up in Southeast Alaska, and they have impacted the fisheries there. We don't expect that would be the case on the Oregon coast, but I know that that is a concern that you will likely be hearing about from folks.
Impact of the fishery, how? The rockfish, the salmon, what?
The red sea urchin fishery is a concern, and Dungeness crab.
Oh, okay. But normally, if please correct me if I'm wrong, they're normally habitate in the kelp beds?
They do like kelp. They don't require kelp necessarily, but that has been one of the drivers behind looking at reintroduction, is that they have a very beneficial effect on restoring kelp beds. If like what we've been experiencing recently with this explosion of purple sea urchins, and they've eradicated a lot of the kelp on Northern California and Southern Oregon coasts, because the otters eat the urchins. That allows the kelp to regrow. So they have a beneficial effect on kelp beds. But,
Okay.
yeah.
Questions? Melissa, Commissioner Cribbins, or Commissioner Sweet?
Michelle, this is John Sweet.
No, I
I
appreciate
actually-
your questions.
The otters on the beach south of Brookings. I don't think they were sea otters. I think they were just regular otters. Do you know which they would have been?
It's most likely they would have been river otters, and river otters will go out onto the beach and in the marine areas, and you'll see them there. We do very occasionally get sea otters, and an occasional lone male that'll disperse down from Washington will show up. I think we've had maybe 24 sea otter sightings in the last 10 years in Oregon. So it's pretty rare to see them. It is possible, but we get sightings of river otters along the shore all the time.
Mm-hmm. I was pretty sure that's what it was, but not certain.
Yeah. Any other questions I can answer for anyone?
Thank you for the report.
Yeah, you're very welcome. And you should have my contact information now. So if any questions come up, please feel free to contact me anytime.
All righty, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Take care.
All righty, entertain a motion for the consent calendar, please.
Move approval of the consent calendar.
A second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All righty, moving on
Aye.
to 5A, request approval of MOU with ODF&W for Coos County Forest access and authorize county forester to sign.
Okay. Thanks, Commissioner Main. I can discuss what this is about to get us started. The county previously had an agreement with ODF&W for monitoring coho spawning on Winchester Creek. That was discontinued when ODF&W did not comply with our agreement. I have put an MOU with this agenda item, which would allow ODF&W back into the county forest to conduct surveying activities on Winchester Creek. I made a bit of an error in a miscommunication with Commissioner Sweet, and the MOU that I've proposed here does not contain some of the additional terms that Commissioner Sweet and the county forester would like to have in an agreement, and I can list those out, some of those at least. First, the idea of limiting this to just surveys of spawning fish from the beginning of November to the end of March, as opposed to just generally habitat. Also, we would like to have any reports that are generated given to us. And also, so those are the main additional items that I think aren't captured by what I put on there, but I would open it up for additional conversation as well.
All right.
Nat, I'd like to see it limited to the spawning period, so we don't invite year-round traffic on our forest. And I think perhaps Lance could verify this, but I think November 1 through March 31 would be more than adequate.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Are there notification requirements that they're going to be there and naming the people who will be out conducting the surveys?
Yeah, what I have in this is that and we can talk about whether it's enough time in advance. This says 48 hours in advance. They let us know what it is they're doing and who is going to be doing it. They provide us with a list of those individuals. It is no more than 2 individuals, and they can't begin conducting those surveys until they get a response from the county forester saying yes or no to what it is that they are proposing. So we do have that.
Good.
Okay. Any other questions? Hearing none, I entertain a motion.
I move we approve, will this be an MOU or just a letter authorizing permission for them to enter the property?
Well, I think that's something we could discuss. If we have an MOU, we can make it good for a number of years. Alternatively, we could certainly issue a letter from the county forester just saying, for this particular spawning season, we're going to let you on our property, and here are the terms and conditions. Which I think the downside of that approach is that we don't have their signature on it saying that they're going to follow our conditions, which I think is very it is beneficial to us. However, it is our property, so we do have the ability to unilaterally impose conditions. So either one will work, but
Well, could we put a clause in that letter that says if you enter the property, it signifies acceptance of these conditions?
yeah, I mean, certainly we could do that.
I'd like to do a 1-year trial with
In
a
the
letter,
form of a letter.
in the form of a letter.
What about having not only we sign off, but whoever's the administrator for ODF and W sign off too?
So a letter agreement that's good for 1 year.
Essentially, what we're issuing is a license with a right of limited entry for a year, right? Is that what we are saying?
I don't know.
And it wouldn't be for 1 year, it would be for the November 1st to March 30th spawning period. But yeah, 1 season.
Go ahead, extend it to the 31st of March, just for the heck of
I forgot how many days were in March, sorry.
it. I noticed.
Okay, till the end of March, yeah.
Yeah, that works. So, kind of a loosey-goosey
Yes, yeah.
motion, but
Well,
I move we approve a letter allowing Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife to conduct spawning surveys on Winchester Creek for the period November 1, 2021 through March 31, 2022.
Okay, do I have a second?
subject to the terms and conditions that we've discussed.
Yes.
Right. Okay,
Thank you.
I'll second.
Okay, for discussion, we're only talking about coho surveys?
Yes.
Okay.
And Marlin.
If you want to do those.
Well, if we're gonna have marlin, I want sailfish. It'd be nice to have a sailfish run up there.
In the fresh water, right.
It'd be impressive.
Species, yes, okay. All right. Any other meaningful discussion?
Not from this group. Impossible.
Anybody from the audience? I don't see any hands raised. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All right. Citizen comments. Who wants to citizen comment? I see Tim Hyatt's on there. Stephanie, somebody. David. And that's it, except for staff and commissioners. And I don't see any hands raised. Still waiting. All righty. Moving on to commissioner reports. Commissioner Sweet, Commissioner Cribbins.
Melissa, do you want to go first?
Let me unmute. Yes. It's been a busy couple of weeks. We had AOC meetings, Association of Oregon County meetings last week, including Public Lands, Governance and Revenue, Legislative Committee, and Board of Directors. Those were held hybrid. And I chaired the Legislative Committee and the Board of Directors. I also chaired a day-and-a-half virtual Energy Trust of Oregon meeting. And I was recently reappointed to the EPA's Local Government Advisory Committee. And we held our organizational meetings last Thursday and Friday. Those were 6-hour meetings. Also attended a briefing on PFAS and the EPA's plans to start regulation of that. It hasn't been such an issue here on the West Coast, at least that we have found yet, but that it's polyfluoroalkylated substances, which essentially come from firefighting foam or plastics manufacturing, especially seen at airports and any place that has a large air base. They're really not sure how it's migrating in the groundwater yet, but the EPA plans to actually set limits and start regulating it by next year. So it's something that we should keep an eye on, because if it is found in our water here, it's the cost of cleanup could be substantial. Spent a lot of time helping to prepare for the Housing Summit, which is coming up on October 29th. And I know Commissioner Sweet got the email for it. I assume Commissioner Main did too. If you haven't, let me know and I will send it to you. It is being held by the Coos and Curry Joint Housing Coordinator, is doing all the work of setting it up, and really talking about the state of housing in our region and the efforts that are being made. And in that vein, we also got notification that we received a grant from Department of Land Conservation and Development Commission to look at our regional housing needs, because we know that people tend to move from Douglas County to Curry to Coos looking for affordable housing and housing that, you know, makes sense for their family. It's not unusual for somebody to commute from Reedsport into Coos Bay to work, or from Port Orford up to Coos Bay or Coquille. So looking at the housing needs more as a region and less as a county. And so that work is going to be done by Eco Northwest. And our planning director, Joe Rolfe, has been very involved in it, and was on the call I was on the other day talking about what our real needs are for the region. I've been attending a lot of Elliott State Forest governance and legislative concept meetings as they look at trying to get this ready for next legislative session. The latest proposal from Department of State Lands and the Land Board is to set the Elliott up as a public benefit corporation, which is a creature of statute, which means that the legislature would actually have to pass legislation in order to set up the owning entity for the Elliott State Forest. And then there would be some sort of governance model for it, which is also part of that discussion. And it would be managed by Oregon State University as a research forest. Those conversations are occurring every week in an effort to try to move that forward and get as much input as possible. And then we had our second set of Oregon Coast Trail meetings, which Commissioner Sweet is the star of, because he is very enthusiastic about the Oregon Coast Trail and has a lot of great ideas about how we can solve some of those spots where it's really difficult or unsafe for people to pass on their way down the Oregon coast. With that, I will pass it over to Commissioner Sweet.
Thank you. Starting back 2 weeks ago, attended a AOC Natural Resources Committee leadership meeting. Following day, went to the Mill Casino for the Chamber's Wednesday meeting, and there was a nice presentation there by CCD, who so successfully helped us implement or get the money that we got through the federal COVID programs out. Later that day, attended the coastal trail meeting that Melissa talked about. Following day, met with Rick Sohn of his family owns Lone Rock Timber Company, and he had some really neat ideas about, I thought, about interfacing with BLM in an attempt to increase the harvest from the ONC lands and the Wagon Road lands. Last week, Tuesday, attended the monthly meeting of the Coos Watershed Association, where I represent the county. Later that day, Nat and I sat in on a meeting with our outside counsel regarding the Coos Bay Wagon Road lawsuit. Attended the public health call-in last Thursday, and it appears as though our efforts to get COVID reduced are paying dividends. The incidence of COVID seems to be reducing, or seems to be falling here. Doesn't seem to be, it is falling in the county. Yesterday, I helped with the Coos Watershed Association with a cleanup of invasive species from the grounds of the Coos History Museum. And last night, we had a fair board meeting. That was it.
Well, thank you, Commissioner Sweet. For myself, I met with the county auditors who audit all the books, and they didn't see anything out of unusual. And apparently, our county treasurer, tax collector, budget officer is doing a wonderful job. Hooray for Megan. I was
very fortunate to have her.
Yes, we are. Yay. If you want to know something about the budget, just call her and she can rattle it right off. And it is somewhat amazing.
She's a great member of the county's leadership team.
Yes, absolutely. I was on the Campari radio show here a while back, talking about the hatchery problem with the reduction in salmonid releases. It's a crisis. I also talked about the proposed wind energy off the coast, where the important thing is how it's going to affect the fishing fleet, and also this feed-in tariff, where if something goes wrong with the project, the investors are held harmless or whole, and the ratepayers, you and I, have to pick up the tab, which greatly concerns me. I was on an Oregon Anglers Association board meeting, and also here recently, I think last Friday, I testified in front of the Oregon Fish and Wildlife Commission on increasing hatchery production because of, as you know, that the returning salmonids are at an all-time low. In fact, many people know that the Coquille River is totally closed to salmon fishing. The return did not come back in the Coos River, etc. So it's a crisis, it looks like to me and many of us. With that, I don't have anything else to report.
Bob, I would add one thing to your talk, your comments about the Coquille River and salmon. I had a visit with a very well-known local fishing guide, I have a lot of confidence in him when it comes to talking about our salmon runs and the decline of the runs. And he said, for all practical purposes, the salmon runs in the Coquille River are extinct.
Well, we used to get about 34,000. Now we're between 200 and 300.
Yeah.
That's not acceptable.
They're not even getting enough return to provide eggs for the hatcheries in the numbers that you need.
Yeah. It's a bad state of affairs.
It's for that river. It's as far as salmon are concerned, it really is almost it probably is a life and death situation right now.
And what else concerns me, I guess, is that ODF&W and the Fish and Wildlife Commission are going in the direction of catch release and eventually no hatchery releases whatsoever. It's all, they think it should be all natural propagation. I don't know how that's going to work when there's so few coming back. Basically, it would eliminate fishing on the coast, and future generations would not enjoy what we've enjoyed in the last 20, 30, 40 years. So it's a grave concern. And like this Oregon Anglers Association, in a little over roughly a year and a half, they've gotten 65,000 members or more. So there's a great need and a great interest in bringing back salmon.
Well, for God's sakes, tell them not to fish. They got more members than we have fish.
They're just about, yes. Yeah, but and we also lose because people come to the coast to go salmon fishing or steelhead fishing, etc. We've lost over the last at least 20 years hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue that come to the coastal community. Apparently, that isn't a priority.
Well, the problems are man-made, and I don't think nature's going to undo it by itself.
Well, they
So
can't.
we
They
need
can't
help.
bring back the numbers without help, but that's my personal opinion anyway.
So,
okay. Anything else?
no, sir.
Nothing else from me.
All righty. With that, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
Is it safe, or are you gonna throw something safe, or are you gonna throw something?
No, I think I'm safe.
Now I'm trying to figure out how to get out of here. Oh.